Hi, I'm Beth Claxton, and I'm here with Jennifer Spencer. Jennifer is a medium and an intuitive coach. And as we have come to know each other, we've realized that our population that we work with is exactly the same. Women between the ages of about around 40 to 60. Jennifer works with them finding their path in life, and I work with them on their health journey. And we've realized that a lot of what we experience dovetails into each other. And I wanted to have this conversation with her so that we could share what our conversations are like, actually.
Yeah, we have a lot of conversations and they're not recorded. So today we decided we should actually record one of our conversations, right?
Yeah. Because they're always so interesting. And I think I want other people to know all of this.
Yes.
All of this.
Yeah, definitely. And we were just talking before we actually came on about our intuition, right? And the power of the work that I do as a medium and an intuitive coach, and then the work that you're doing around helping women to really understand what's going on in their bodies, understanding like the changes that are going on through perimenopause and menopause, and how much our intuition plays a role in that journey.
Right. So let's talk about that again. So intuition, can you explain what intuition is?
Yeah, so for me, intuition is really about that gut feeling, right? It's that thing that we can't always see, but it's that inner knowing that we have that something or someone is either something we want to go toward or something we want to go away. And it's very much this recognition that our bodies are so intuitive, right? Our mind spends so much time questioning and doubting and fearing what's about to happen, but our bodies are actually where this intuitive wisdom lives. And so for me, especially as I'm going through this journey in my 40s, my intuition has been such an important role in finding my purpose, finding my path, doing the work that I'm doing, and then also in the journey I'm going on through my body that's happening now, which you've been a big part of.
Right. And the generation before us, our mothers, were really not encouraged to follow intuition. It was very scripted. And so we have not really had any training.
Yeah. I think a lot of us have been taught to doubt our intuition and not trust it. And I think a lot of us, as we're going through spiritual awakenings, we're going through this changing world that we're living in, we're recognizing this power of our intuition to actually harness as this superpower that's sitting right inside of us.
And one of the things that I'd like to say is I know when someone's really tapping into the truth, the intuition that is inside of them, when they feel an emotional give or an emotional break, if like tears start coming, then that's really ringing true inside.
Totally. And one of the things that Beth and I were also talking about is how much, especially at this point in our lives, our intuition plays such a role in our bodies, right? In understanding what's going on in our bodies. And you've been such an advocate and support for me as I'm going through the journey of perimenopause in just understanding what is happening right now and how do I move through these changes and try to take more of an intuitive approach, which I haven't been taught as I've been going through the journey and going through the medical system, right?
Do you want to tell us about your journey?
Yeah. So I'm 42. I started experiencing symptoms of perimenopause probably in my late 30s without actually knowing it. And I would constantly go to my GP, ask all these questions about, is my iron low? Like all of these questions. And I was consistently leaving feeling really frustrated, not understanding what was going on. And I started to see a naturopath, started to get more information, and intuitively have started to kind of find the resources and the support that I've needed to go on this journey. But what was super interesting is I had gone to this point of frustration, really not knowing what was happening. Beth and I are neighbors. And as soon as I met Beth, she looked at me and said, I think I know what's happening. And I said, well, how do you know? Like, you don't know my chart, you don't know what's going on, you don't know all these details. And she said, there's an intuition that, you know, I can sense about some of the things you're telling me. And I think it took us an hour to figure out, not even that, what was happening. And I felt immediately like you finally saw me, like I was seen by someone that really understood the symptoms and like intuitively what was going on with my body, right?
And how did that feel inside of you to be seen and know that you were on the right path?
Well, I think it's just a journey that, especially, you know, in this age that I'm at, where I'm starting to have all these symptoms, there's this real fear of not having control and feeling like I'm losing myself and I don't know where I'm going or what's happening and what the journey forward looks like. And then to have someone that instantly understands and recognizes what you are feeling, it feels just this whole expansion in my body of like, oh, I'm gonna be okay, right?
Oh,
yeah.
And that frustration feeling is like a closing feeling, like doors closing. So that was your intuition saying like, you're not finding the answers here.
Totally. And it's also been interesting also as a journey with my partner because, you know, I'm on this journey of trying to figure out what's going on, why am I feeling this way, what are these symptoms that I'm experiencing, and then he's trying to support me and help understand like what could it be, right? And then so it's this mystery that we're trying to solve. And I think the intuition plays such a big role in it.
Oh, these poor guys.
Yes.
I've been really like so lovingly like realizing that so many separations, marriages fall apart, people leave each other, they don't understand, like women don't understand what's happening to them, they think something's wrong, the men don't understand, and like so many relationships fall apart right now. It's so tragic. So yes, I mean, knowing that something is happening, admitting it, and seeking help is
What have you noticed is sort of the theme or the trend with women and how we're learning to trust our intuition as it comes to our bodies? Like, what are some of the things you're noticing are sort of patterns that the women that you work with are going through?
I think, well, the women that finally make it to my practice, they have trusted their intuition and they know that they're not getting the answers that they want. They know that when they're given antidepressants that they don't want them, that there's something different, and they keep looking. So they have a strong will, and not everybody does. And so many people are afraid, so fear will immediately kill intuition. And so many are afraid of the Women's Health Initiative study that said that hormone replacement therapy causes cancer when it really doesn't. So there's all that fear that we need to dispel. Really.
I think there's a big disconnect from where we used to be, where we would, you know, something would be wrong. We would have a symptom about something, right? And then immediately we would go to the doctor and say, can you tell me what's wrong with me? And they would give you an answer and you would just take that as the truth, right? Whereas now, I think also a lot of us are starting to question, you know, we have to recognize that we are creating our reality. We are the ones that know our bodies better than anyone else. And so we have to start to question some of those things that are being told, this is what's happening to you. And then intuitively asking, but is that actually how I feel, right?
Exactly. And understanding that Western medicine, the concept of Western medicine and how Western medicine operates is like a triage unit in a war. Like, we are taught to handle catastrophes, do those hysterectomies before this person exsanguinates, you know, intervene so they can just keep going and we can like put them back on the front lines. But that's not how we really want to work. We're not in a war. And we get to trust what's happening. We get to trust our journey. We get to trust that things can be subtle. And things can take time, and we can handle things a lot differently. We might not be exsanguinating. We might be able to take some progesterone and regulate our bleeding.
And so tell us a little bit about how your practice differs from traditional Western medicine, because I've had a lot of friends that I've told about you, and I sometimes struggle to put into words exactly what you do.
Yeah, so I have done functional medicine training, which has changed the way that I think when I'm working with people, with patients, in that I don't think about lists of all the things that could be wrong. That's how we're taught in medical school, to have a differential diagnosis list, like, is it this, and does it meet this requirements, and if it doesn't, then it could be this, and does it meet these requirements, checking off boxes.
Yes.
Now the way, and I think of it like if there was a pictorial of that, it would be like a computer with like just lines coming across, like boom, 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 you know, those old computer things,
Yes.
how the lines just like would
Yes.
start to appear.
Spit out the information.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now the way I think is think about the inside of a big clock with all the wheels that are turning, and this wheel over here will affect this wheel down here, but it goes through all these other systems before you start to see something. So understanding how these wheels are connected, and that a cog in this wheel over here would cause a problem over here, and that it's all connected.
It's a whole system versus like a one-off solution to each little problem.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. So there's that, and I've worked closely with Dr. David Rosensweet.
Okay.
And learned so much about hormones. We have a group of providers that work together, and we meet every week for an hour, and we share cases, and we discuss them. We share new information, and we've learned so many of these really subtle signs of menopause and perimenopause that aren't recognized, like cardiac palpitations, like palpitations in the heart. I remember having those.
Which started for me. That's why I started getting afraid and going to the doctor, because that was my first symptom when I was in my late 30s.
Right. So many women have complete cardiac evaluations, which
I did that too.
Which isn't a bad thing. And then they know that their heart is just fine.
Yeah. However, what I remember for me is I was having those symptoms. My doctor said, let's go send you for like a echocardiogram and all the different things. And so I had to wear a heart monitor for a few days. And I remember my family being so scared, like, what's wrong with her? Is she going to be okay? And one of the things that I think is worrisome is that we are constantly worrying about the future, right? So I'm thinking, well, there's something wrong with me. Like, you know, the worst case is like, am I going to die? And without the information of some of these symptoms that could be causes of perimenopause, for example, that so many women experience, we go to the worst case scenario, which increases our stress and anxiety, which probably then increases the symptoms that we're having, right?
Yeah, and increases our fear and completely annihilates our intuition.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, and it's always good to make sure that the worst case scenario is not happening.
Yeah.
And there are so many women that have these lengthy cardiac evaluations. When could we have first tried maybe a little progesterone or maybe a touch of estrogen to see how that worked?
Yeah.
I remember thinking that it was caffeine, and caffeine did exacerbate those in me, but they were still happening.
Yeah.
But I haven't had one in a long time.
Yeah.
Now.
So how do we start as women to become more educated about this stuff? Because I feel like for me, I went to sort of the extreme, which it sounds like a lot of women do, right? Where they're going to these extreme situations that then put this alarm going off in them that their intuition is telling them like something's not right. But how do we start as a collective of women to educate each other about, before you get to this point, there may be some things to be aware of?
Yeah, I think the first place to start is to talk about it. Is that we all need to talk about it, and we need to know what you're experiencing that may be different than what I'm experiencing, and what we're experiencing that's the same.
Yeah.
And why do some people have more severe symptoms than others?
Yeah.
there are a lot of reasons. And I think that, I know for me, working, I call it my corporate job, but it wasn't. It was a hospital job, but it's like corporate. You just, you put on your masculine and you go to work.
Yep.
And stopping and resting is not what you do.
Yeah.
And so we drive our adrenals to exhaustion at the point where they're supposed to be being supported.
Yeah.
And so when we finally our ovaries are finally starting to dwindle, we don't have that support anymore. So I think that our symptoms are a lot worse than our mothers were.
Yeah.
And generations earlier. And probably other cultures on the planet are not having symptoms like we are. And there are a lot of toxins in our environment.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of trauma as well. So the trauma that replays, that's a drain on our adrenals as well.
It's funny, I heard a quote the other day and it was like, the first half of our life is just experiencing, and then the second half is like undoing the things that happened in our first half of our life.
100%.
And so when we hit this like late 30s, 40s, we're like, okay, what am I really doing? What do I want to do? Am I really going to heal this once and for all? And then we start having the symptoms. So it's sort of this whole journey, I'm realizing, for a lot of women that are in my age demographic right now, of like peeling back the layers, healing the things that have challenged us, you know, emotionally and spiritually and physically, and then starting to understand like what are the repercussions of what's happened to our bodies as a result of some of that emotional stress that we went through in our earlier years, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And another piece of advice I would have is, if you're starting to feel afraid, really sit down and take a deep breath and think about, what are you afraid of? What is that fear? And maybe it's something irrational. Maybe you can talk yourself off a ledge.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe you can go talk to a girlfriend.
Yeah.
Or you could even talk to your mom and see what she has to say.
Yeah.
Or a sister.
Yeah.
And see if that fear is truly rational.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's a really good point. I think community is so key. You know, I just went through an experience the other day where I had missed one of my cycles, and I was completely terrified of like, what is going on? And I remember messaging you, and then I messaged a few of my girlfriends and said, is this normal? Like, what is happening? And one of my girlfriends was telling me about when she was the same age that I was, she had that exact experience happen. And immediately my nervous system starts to relax because I realize, okay, I don't need to go to the doctor and rush and like panic, which is what I would have done. And I can actually just trust that what is happening is okay. And there's resources like you and other people that have gone through this that can help to understand like what is actually happening, right?
Right. And also, we were talking before we started this about this time in our lives, this perimenopausal time, and we've been so used to having these cycles.
Yes.
This just cycling from puberty, and you know, puberty's kind of rocky.
Yeah.
And before then, life's kind of easy.
Yeah.
And so we start to have these cycles when we're 11, 12, 13, some girls 9.
Yeah.
And we're having this hormonal roller coaster every month.
Yeah.
And finally, in perimenopause, you skip a period.
Yeah.
So you've missed an ovulation.
Yeah.
Or in menopause, like everything stops. It's like, wait, there's no more drama. Like there is a possibility for calm.
Yeah.
And I remember having my first hot flash. I was working on labor and delivery, and I just got hot, and I thought, oh my gosh, I'm having a hot flash. And then this huge sense of calm came over me, and I knew that it was going to be okay.
Yeah.
So I think that this is a really important time in our lives to trust that intuition, because once the waves and the roller coaster ride is over, we have an amazing opportunity to really tap into that intuition with the calm.
Yeah, completely. And what I'm learning more and more is that when we can trust what's happening with the body, there's, like you said, that sense of calm. And then there's this aliveness that starts to build in us, right? There's this feeling of like, oh, I'm actually in control of this body. Like I'm working with it versus working against it. I feel like when we grow up, you know, I remember being a young girl and going and buying tampons and having to hide them at the drugstore because I was so embarrassed, right? And then you get to this stage and you realize I'm not worried about my body anymore. Like I can actually, if something happens, I can move with the process of aging and actually embrace what's occurring, knowing that people have for generations been here before and they'll be here after us.
Right.
And we can actually trust that there's wisdom and support and guidance now to feel more empowered and inspired by what the changes are, right?
Right. And there's also the opportunity for creativity.
Yes.
And really making a change and doing your work. And it's, I found for me, it's so interesting. I'll have these opportunities come up, like amazing opportunities, and I'll tap into my intuition, and it's just like, it's not creative. It doesn't jive with me.
Yeah.
And so I'll pass it up, because this part of life is about like really digging in and being creative and doing your work.
Definitely. And then in that rediscovery, I feel like this is the stage of like really rediscovering who you are and what you want and what matters to you, and changing things that aren't working and bringing things in that bring you joy, right? So yeah, I love that perspective.
Yeah, and whether we have, you know, children or not, most of us have empty nested by now, and we have like this, we don't have the hormone crazy cycles anymore, or we're on some hormone replacement that's helping smooth out the pits and valleys and highs and craziness,
all the roller coaster of the journey, and enjoying the ride, right? Yeah. So what would be the advice that you would give anyone that may be watching this to start to, you know, I'm sure there's things that we're talking about here where people are thinking, wow, I really resonate with that, and I've never heard someone talk about that. What would be some things that you would suggest in terms of either resources or first steps in terms of like starting to learn more about what's actually happening?
So David Rosensweet has a really good book called Happy Healthy Hormones.
Okay.
And you can reach out to on his website. I believe that it's Menopause Method. You can find it by going to Menopause Method. And reaching out, he has a data bank of all the providers in the country that work with him. I think he's the person that I've worked with that's really helped me understand what's going on. And we have other people working with us that are incredible resources. And I've interviewed one of the women.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah. And there's another really good book by a man named Avram Blooming called Estrogen Matters. And it really helps dispel all of the myths that were put out there by the Women's Health Initiative study. And he also digs into the research behind hormone replacement. I think that meditation is a great resource also. So something to calm the mind, calm the fear, and trusting that inner voice, just getting in touch with that inner voice.
Love that. Love that.
And move.
Yes, movement is key.
Move.
That's amazing and inspiring me. I see her leaving in the mornings to go do her exercise, and I'm like, okay, gotta get my workout and gotta get my exercise, or movement of whatever feels good, right? Some days it's not going on a big hike. Sometimes it's resting or yoga or having a bath, or really trusting that intuitive wisdom of what your body needs.
Right. So movement's super important. And when we don't, we can get really stagnant, and then that sort of blocks everything else. Totally. And then if someone would want to start working with you for the first time, what would they need to do? So right now I have medical licenses in Arizona and Washington State. And as a medical doctor, patients have to be in that state to work with me. You have to be on the soil of that state. Okay. So you can travel here, that's fine. And then there are other providers that are around the country that have the same approach.
Okay. Amazing.
Love it.
We'll definitely have to do this chat again.
Oh,
there's
yeah.
so much more to talk about.
Yeah, I really want to dig into intuition and what that is. And
Yes.
yeah, really
Love that.
feeling into that and people learning from it
Yes.
and trusting it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Amazing.
Yeah, thanks, Jenn.
You're welcome.